What if the sound that carried reggae across oceans started with a church hymn and a train whistle, before dancehall took over TikTok, before the Marley myth became a global brand? There were three young men called the Ethiopians. They didn't just make songs, they rewired how Jamaica felt its own heartbeat. But behind the harmony is a story of grit, shutdowns, and a price they never expected to pay. Before today's polished reggae playlists, there was a Kingston where power went out, strikes shut streets, and studio lights flickered. The Ethiopians turned that daily chaos into hooks you could hum, protest you could dance to. Train to Skaville wasn't just a tune, it was a vehicle. It moved Rocksteady forward, carried voices across the Atlantic, and taught future artists how to be sweet and sharp at the same time. So here's the question: how did one harmony group make the island sway differently, and why did it cost them so much? Shift with me. Picture it, a singer raised on church harmonies, a city turning from ska speed to rocksteady glide, and a beat that sounds like steel wheels on track. That train rhythm wasn't an accident, it was an idea, a brand, a blueprint other singers borrowed. While the country argued and the lights flickered, these voices kept time like a metronome for a restless nation. If you've ever felt a reggae groove settle into your chest like a heartbeat, you've already felt their fingerprints. Keep going. Every 60 seconds will peel back another layer. The UK tours that tested their voices and their faith, the studio hustles that linked them with the architects of a whole sound. The moment their joyous harmonies turned into frontline reporting, everything crashed. Hong Kong flu, snapshots pressed into vinyl when the news felt too heavy to hold. They made you sing along to the headline, and then think about it on the bus ride home. Stay with me, because this isn't just nostalgia, it's a map. Follow the tracks, and you'll see how a small group taught Jamaica to tell the truth with melody, how they bridged choir lofts and sound systems, and how a single tragic loss forced the music to ask, what happens when the harmony breaks? The answer says everything about art, survival, and the hidden engineers of a genre. So here's my promise: you won't just hear the hits, you'll meet the people, the places, and the pressure that forged them. By the end, you'll know how the Ethiopians changed music, and why their echo still rides the rhythm today. Ready? Then let's step onto the platform together. The engine's warming, the signal's green, and the first stop is the beginning. Church choir to Trenchtown, and the day a train beat was born. In the mid-1960s, Kingston, the radio swung between American soul imports and Jamaica's own fast-skanking ska. But on backroad sound systems, a slower sway was taking shape, rocksteady, with bass lines like Warm Thunder and harmonies that felt like Sunday morning in the middle of Friday night. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, the power cut again. The streets ran on rumor and hustle, and young singers sharpened their craft under corrugated zinc roofs where the heat never slept. Hold that sound in your head. Now add a voice raised in church. Leonard Dillon grew up in Bound Brook, just outside Port Antonio, in a strict Seventh-day Adventist home. His grandfather led the church choir. Those harmonies weren't hobby, they were homework. By high school, he was fronting a local group called the Playboys, later Ray and the Gladiators, earning a nickname for his silky delivery, Sparrow. Then came the standard Jamaican artist migration. Leave the coast, chase work in Kingston, learn to live with too little space and a head full of songs. He landed first in Back-O-Wall, then Trenchtown, the crash course every great voice took. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. Before there was the Ethiopians, there was Jack Sparrow, Dylan's early Studio One identity. Peter Tosh clocked the talent, walked him into the Whalers circle, and an audition followed. The session yielded 4 sides credited to Jack Sparrow. On 3, like the underground favorite Ice Water, the Whalers themselves sang harmonies behind him. It wasn't a label manufacturing a star, it was Kingston's living workshop passing a torch. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, Coxo Dodd's Studio One was the University of Jamaican music, a doorway you pushed open with nerve, tune, and timing. Dylan did just that, but the next move wasn't solo. He teamed with two rough-voiced strivers, Stephen Tough Cock Taylor and Aston Charlie Morrison. They worked day jobs, masonry, odd gigs, and rehearsed anywhere that would have them, especially the Ethiopian Reorganization Center in Waterhouse. By the time anyone knew the name, the parts were already dangerous. Church-trained lead, streetwise harmonies, and a spiritual compass pointing due Ethiopia. Through that community, Dylan stepped fully into Rastafari, an anchor that would give their protest songs moral spine. Hold that sound in your head. Now add the first sparks. Early Studio One titles like Live Good, I'm Gonna Take Over Now, and the late ska burner, I Am Free. They're not just tunes, they're a blueprint. Choir phrasing over a rhythm section easing down from ska speed to rocksteady glide. Live Good is the mission statement in 2 words. Behave righteous, sing firm, and let melody carry message. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. This origin story is DIY to the bone. Cash was short, sessions got scraped together with favors, and a financier from the building trade when the group needed one. Kingston didn't hand out golden tickets, it handed out small chances, and the Ethiopians kept turning them into records. Every take was a bet on themselves, every harmony a bridge between Sabbath morning and Saturday night dance. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, the beat itself was changing. Bands slowed the tempo, bass got heavier, and arrangers started thinking in locomotive rhythms. Chug-a-chug guitar, rolling organ, snare like a crossing bell. The city's pulse and the group's church-forged blend were about to meet on one idea so strong it felt inevitable once you heard it. If Chapter 1 is the map, the world, the pressure, the pieces, then Chapter 2 is the moment the map becomes a track. One self-produced single will turn an island's everyday motion into a new groove, push a harmony trio onto British stages, and give reggae one of its first great metaphors. The question is simple: how do you make a nation move like a train? Next, the engine starts, train to Skaville, and the birth of a brand. After years of scraping for studio time and hustling odd jobs, the moment finally came. Picture Kingston 1966. The ska wave was fading fast. Dancers wanted something slower, cooler, something they could rock steady to. Bands like the Paragons and the Techniques were starting to soften the tempo, but no one had found the next true rhythm yet. Then came Leonard Dillon, Stephen Taylor, and Aston Morrison, the Ethiopians, with a song that didn't sound like a new act. It sounded like a vehicle. Freeze the frame. Listen to that hook one more time. Train to Skaville. That shuffle, that chug, the way the organ breathes in time with a moving wheel, it's hypnotic. It's the sound of Kingston's daily commute turned into art. The track was self-produced, a rare thing for young singers at the time. They scraped together studio money, borrowed session players, and laid down a song that didn't just describe a train, it was one. When that first bass line rolled in, people stopped talking. It didn't sound like ska anymore. It sounded like the island was exhaling. By the end of 1966, Train to Skaville had become an underground anthem, then an export. When it hit the UK the next year on the Dr. Bird label, it slipped into the British charts, a first for many Jamaican acts. And suddenly the Ethiopians were more than a local harmony trio. They were ambassadors of a new beat. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, Kingston was restless. The strikes, the heat, the politics, everything was on edge. Music was escape, but it was also reflection. That's what made the Ethiopians' train theme so powerful. It wasn't fantasy. It was motion, the promise of movement when the country itself was stuck in crisis. Every youth who felt trapped by poverty could relate to the idea of catching that metaphorical train out of chaos. Freeze the frame again. This isn't just a catchy hook, it's a message disguised as melody. The train isn't leaving Kingston, it's leaving the old world behind. Dylan's voice preaches uplift without preaching. His harmonies, rooted in the church, carry joy with purpose. The track becomes a weapon, soft-edged, soulful, and unstoppable. Numbers don't tell it, but this clip does. When they played Train to Skaville live in 1967, crowds lost their rhythm. In the best way possible, the song's call and response structure felt like community in motion, and when they hit the UK in 1968 to 69, the sound turned heads. British mods, West Indian immigrants, and white soul kids all moved to the same pulse. It didn't matter if you were from Brixton or Birmingham, that Skaville train rhythm pulled you in. Then came the backlash. Critics said the group's lyrics were too repetitive, too folksy, not as polished as the studio bands, but that missed the point. The Ethiopians were channeling raw Jamaica, unfiltered street-level truth in a harmony form. They didn't chase approval from Uptown or London, they chased feel, and that feel would define reggae's DNA for decades. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. Engine 54, their 1968 debut album, wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a concept record before Jamaica even used that term. Every track, Train to Glory, Train to Skaville, Engine 54, carried the same metaphor: progress, motion, salvation through rhythm. The production, with that distinctive chugging guitar and brass echo, made it sound like a locomotive pulling through mist. You could close your eyes and see the train in the music. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, ska's pioneers were either reinventing or fading. Prince Buster slowed down, the Skatalites scattered, but the Ethiopians doubled down. They didn't need a new trend, they were the transition. Train to Skaville and Engine 54 bridged the old ska fire and the coming reggae groove. They gave Jamaica its first taste of forward-thinking rhythm, still danceable, still spiritual, but more grounded in everyday reality. Hold that thought, because this success wasn't glamorous. The UK tour was brutal, cold halls, long drives, and little money, but the experience sharpened them. It taught Dylan how the world heard Jamaican music and how to speak to both locals and outsiders at once. That lesson would power their next wave, the socially conscious hits that turned headlines into hooks. They'd conquered rhythm. Now they'd turned to message. The same trio that taught Jamaica how to move was about to teach it how to listen. The strikes, the street clashes, the flu epidemic, all of it would pour into their next songs. And the question became, could a harmony group become the island's conscience without losing its joy? Next stop, everything crash, protest with a smile, and the moment the Ethiopians found their true voice. They weren't just selling music, they were selling permission. The Ethiopians gave working-class kids a uniform that didn't need a school, straw hats or beanies, neatly pressed shirts, tough shoes, and a face that said, "We've seen enough to sing the truth." They looked like the neighborhood, no glitter, so when they sang about strikes, power cuts, and overcrowded buses, it felt like a cousin telling you what really happened. Parents heard complaint, kids heard courage. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, the island was jumpy. Late 68 into 69, strikes disrupted daily life. Blackouts made the night feel longer. Politics heated dance hall talk. Into that pressure stepped a harmony trio who could turn front-page stress into street corner songs. With producer Carl, Sir J.J. Johnson, the Ethiopians cut a run of records that sounded like headlines you could dance to. Everything Crash, Woman Capture Man, Hong Kong Flu, among others. Those tunes weren't dressed for court, they were dressed for life. If you were young, you copied the cool, the way Dylan stood square to the mic, the clipped smile on a heavy lyric, the ease of men who didn't need to shout to be heard. Freeze the frame, listen to the engine under the vocal. It's not the later one-drop meditation of 70s country's roots. This is the late Rocksteady, early reggae pivot, a relaxed backbeat, rimshot that speaks instead of slams, guitar skank ticking on the offbeat like a second hand, and an organ bubble that fills the space between bass notes like breath between footfalls. The bass logic is deceptively simple. It answers the drum, pushes on the "and" after 2 or 4, then pulls back, like taking 1 step forward, 1 half step back, forever in balance. That push-pull is why these records still move dance floors. Your body anticipates the hit before it lands. Numbers don't tell it. This clip does. Solo the organ bubble in your head. A steady 8th note pattern with a slight swell at the start of each bar. Now drop the vocal on top. Dylan's lead is church sure. Rounded vowels, a touch of vibrato at phrase ends, and the preacher's habit of saving the strongest word for last. Taylor and Morrison are the grit and glue. One voice slightly rougher to sand the shine off the melody, the other writing a third above or below to lock the chord. The trick is how they leave air. They don't stack every bar with 3-part harmony. They aim the stack at the hook, then let verses breathe with call and response. That choir stack on the chorus is the secret weapon. Pull Taylor out and the engine loses torque. Pull Morrison out and the chords stop speaking. Take Dylan away and the sermon has no pulpit. One studio trick you can't unhear after this. Sir JJ often framed the voice with short horn stabs, tight brassy punctuation that works like commas in a sentence. You hear a line, then a horn says, "Listen, this matters." Engineers kept the vocal up front with plate or spring reverb just long enough to give space, not so long it washed the words. Guitars stayed dry and percussive, drums favored rim and hi-hat chatter over toms, bass sat fat but never boomy. It's kitchen table minimalism, nothing fancy, everything functional, all of it serving the lyric and the lyrics. Everything crash is reportage in plain talk. Lights gone, water gone, money short. The chorus lists chaos like a market tally, then spins it into a sing-along. Parents called it negative, but in a city where the news could feel like rumor, this was verification. Your week sung back to you with melody and nerve. Hong Kong Flu captured the weird mix of jokes and fear people make around real sickness. Woman Capture Man flipped everyday romantic drama into a parable. The myth engine ran on recognition. You wore what they wore because they sang what you lived. Hold that sound in your head. Now add culture shock. In Kingston Yards, kids echoed new slang from these records, little turns of phrase, the pacing of Dylan's lines, the way a punchline hangs for a beat. In UK immigrant communities, their songs slipped into house parties and West Indian clubs, nudging DJs to slow sets down, to prioritize message alongside moves. Those Trojan-issued LPs, Reggae Power and Woman Capture Man, weren't just albums, they were starter kits for selectors figuring out how to mix sweetness with steel. Zine writers and shop clerks took the bait. They put the Ethiopians on handwritten charts, taped set lists to counters, and sold the idea that protest didn't have to mean a lecture. And then the backlash landed. Some uptown critics said the music was too rough, too colloquial, not refined enough next to orchestrated soul imports. Others claimed the songs were novelty, too specific to last, but that's why copycats never quite felt right. The Ethiopians' power wasn't just in the topic, it was in the balance. Soft voice, hard fact, friendly hook, flinty truth. Sir JJ's boards caught the middle, warm enough for home stereos, tough enough for sound systems. You can parody their titles, but you can't fake that moral center without the church and the street both inside the mic. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, the dance floor became a town hall. When the hook hit, people danced. When the verse landed, they nodded. That push-pull is craft, not accident. The drum stays. Conversational hi-hat, whispering between the kick and rim. The bass writes a counter melody that leads you to the chorus. The harmonies arrive like reinforcement at the exact moment the lyric needs weight. Producer and band understood arrangement as storytelling, stakes up, release, detail, relief, heat, breeze. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. The Ethiopians' image wasn't constructed in a label war room. It was built out of thrift, work, and respectability politics. Clothes ironed because it might get you a little more safety at a checkpoint. Attitude measured because the lyric was already sharp. That restraint became style, and that style became influence. Young singers learned you could be plain-spoken and still be poetic. DJs learned you could prime a crowd with joy and still land a line that makes them think on the bus home. So why does it still hit today? Because the records were engineered for human time, breath, stride, heartbeat. The hi-hat speaks in footsteps. The bass maps the road. The vocal points to the horizon. Strip the tabloids away, and the secret weapon is the choir stack at the hook, the organ's quiet engine, and the lyrics' clean spine. Pull any one of those out, and the whole machine falls apart. Mid-game mastery is one thing, surviving the studio maze is another. To keep the message moving, they had to crisscross Kingston's producer network, adapting to new rooms, new ears, and new economics without losing their center. Next, we go inside the web, the rooms, the rulers, and the quiet decisions that shaped what you hear when the needle drops. Behind the posters was a price tag: sleep, blood, sanity. The Ethiopians had built a rhythm the world could move to, but momentum has a way of demanding more. We're going to sit with this for a second. Train to Skaville cracks the UK in late '67, and suddenly a harmony trio from Kingston is living out of suitcases in a cold country. The first British run stretches roughly 3 months in 1968, then 2 more in 1969. Cheap hotels, long van rides, and stages that sound nothing like the studios back home. The money looks decent on paper, but splits, fees, and middlemen shrink the take. Back in Jamaica, they still juggle day jobs between sessions just to keep bills paid. Listen to how the tempo feels heavier now. This is the part fans don't put on t-shirts. Studios, favors, and a builder's back. Leonard Dillon never really left construction. When the music money dipped, the trowel and level came back out. In 1973, that skill turns uncanny. He literally helps build Lee Scratch, Perry's Black Ark, a sentence that reads like myth but is on the record. The singer who preached motion lays bricks for the room that will change reggae's sound. It's heroic and humbling at once. Architect by day, voice by night, carrying both loads until the spine aches. Sessions jump producer to producer, Sir JJ, then other camps, each with a calendar, a sound, and an opinion about singles. That network kept the hits coming, but it also meant favors owed, quick turnarounds, and little room to rest nerves or rethink direction. Kingston Circuit could be family 1 week and a knife drawer the next. One missed payday, one shelved track, and the room goes cold. The myth says art thrives on pressure. The truth is pressure burns fuel, and the tank doesn't refill fast enough when you're gigging, cutting, and raising families at the same time. We're going to sit with this. On paper, the Ethiopians' catalog keeps moving. In real life, the circle takes hits you can't hear on vinyl. September 1975, Stephen Tough Cock Taylor dies in a road accident. The harmony that sanded the edges of Dylan's voice is gone. Incident is too small a word. It didn't just bruise them, it changed the chemistry. Most acts fade. The Ethiopians didn't fade. They detonated. For a while, Dylan goes quiet. Retreating home to Port Antonio trying to figure out what music even means without that second voice. There's no dramatic press conference, no official "we're done." There's absence, shows canceled, sessions postponed, a name that suddenly feels too big for one remaining founder to carry without breaking. In 1977, Dylan tries to restart the engine with a new lineup and the album Slave Call, but the spell has changed. The air around the songs is different when the man who used to stand on your left is no longer there. The legend freezes younger than it should have because the safe, middle-aged version of this group never gets written. Listen to the records from before and after, back to back. You can hear the missing weight in the stack, the way the harmony used to arrive like reinforcements at the chorus. Pull Taylor out and you don't just lose one voice. You lose the way the bass line seemed to breathe when he answered Dylan, the way a crowd's cheer tilted when those two locked on a syllable. This is the cost. This is the part fans don't put on t-shirts, and yet architects keep building even after the storm takes a wall. Dylan records again, now more selectively, and the old sides gather new life at revival dances and in reissue bins. The story bends from crisis toward meaning. If the fall is where we measure the price, the legacy is where we learn why it was worth paying. How do songs born in blackouts and strike weeks become comfort decades later? How does a train rhythm keep arriving on time long after the original conductors are gone? Next, resolution and legacy. What survived? What changed? And how the Ethiopians still teach new artists to move a crowd and tell the truth in the same breath. Before the Ethiopians, street-level Jamaica mostly sang about good times. After them, everyone chased songs that could move a dance floor and tell the week's truth. If you were there, you already knew. If you weren't, now you do. Spot the lineage. The Ethiopians' train rhythm and choir-leaning hooks ripple into UK mod and skinhead scenes, then resurface in the late 70s, early 80s. Two-tone revival. The selector literally put Train to Skaville in their set and later recorded it. Proof that the groove traveled generations. Zoom in on reggae's family tree. Writers note how Train to Skaville's driving bass logic became a building block other hits leaned on, part of why the cut still pops in revival sets. And the influence isn't only vibe, it's method. Turning headlines into hooks, Everything Crash, Hong Kong Flu gave later singers a license to be topical without losing sweetness, a template copied across the boss reggae era. Lyric sheets listing strike actions make the point plain. Rissues kept the wax alive when radio moved on. Engine 54 with Train to Skaville glory cycles through label represses. Dr. Bird, Cherry Red, bundled reggae power, and Woman Capture Man on an expanded CD, making a new doorway for younger listeners. In 2024-25, Slave Call 1977, produced by 90, reappears on heavyweight colored vinyl. Evidence the demand never left. DJs still drop Skaville to reset a floor from London to Kingston. September 1975, tragedy. Stephen Tough Cock Taylor is killed in a traffic accident. The harmony chemistry, the extra weight that hit on choruses can't be replaced. Dylan steps back, then returns with Slave Call in 1977, taking the name forward with new singers. When Leonard Dylan passes in 2011, the obituaries don't just mourn a voice, they frame him as a bridge from ska to rocksteady to reggae, and one of the first Jamaican artists to tour Britain hard. Listen again with today's headphones. You'll hear the organ bubble talking between the bass notes, the rim shot like a signal lamp, and a choir stack that lands only when the lyric needs moral weight. That balance, soft voice, hard fact, is why the Ethiopians feel current in a world that still spins through strikes, outages, and rent due. Their records were engineered for human time, breath, stride, heartbeat, and that never ages. Spot the lineage. Any modern ska or roots act that can make you dance and think in the same chorus is living in this echo. Start with Train to Skaville. Feel the motion, drop everything, crash. Hear the week sung back to you. Graduate to the Dr. Bird twofer, Reggae Power, Woman Capture Man for the Protest with a Smile era. Finish with Slave Call to hear the restart after loss. They weren't just selling music, they sold permission to be plain-spoken, to be joyful under pressure, to turn daily life into harmony without asking anyone uptown for approval. Even artists who've never heard the name are moving inside their echo. If you were there, you already knew. If you weren't, now you do. What was the first Ethiopians cut that hit you in the chest? Skaville, everything crash, or a deep cut we missed. Drop it below. I'll pin the best picks into our community playlist. Who deserves a full deep dive next? The Paragons, the Techniques, or a Sir JJ producer story? This is C Trends. Subscribe so this history doesn't get erased by the algorithm, and hit the next episode where we trace how 1968-70 turned front page headlines into boss reggae anthems. Signature cue, Woman Capture Man rises under a closing montage of Trojan spines, Dr. Bird reissues, and a selector riding the fader into Skaville.